Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over more of the 4K collection. We're going for G to H this time. Not much to add to the introduction today. In fact, nothing to say at all. Let's just get into it. So starting off, we got Glass. If you don't know, the final film of the M Night Shyamalan Unbreakable trilogy. This one was very polarizing when it came out. People hated the ending. People felt they were getting swindled because they thought something big was going to happen, but it didn't happen. Now, in my opinion, I would say this is the weakest film in the trilogy. Sure, like Split and Unbreakable, which are later in the collection. They're just stronger films because they are standalone, like stories. But with the case of Glass, I think it was a very good conclusion. Yes, the ending was a bit how would you say, like, unexpected. But but then again, I understood what Shyamalan was going for. He wasn't going to try to do this big superhero climax because that's a Marvel thing, not a Shyamalan thing. And it was a good ending to leave this world, and not they're not going to make any more sequels, even though the movie did well, which makes sense. Shyamalan doesn't really, he's not really a sequel guy. He's not a really big franchise guy, and I respect that. That's why I love his directing, and it made sense why he doesn't go into interviews a lot going over why he made decisions like this. He just he expects people who really love his work to understand where he's coming from. Because if someone who loves his work understands what the director's trying to do, they understand it. If they don't, you have to just look into it more again. So yeah, but that was Glass. Up next is The Goonies, a classic movie. Not much to really say. Like, if you know The Goonies, it's a very classic '80s kids adventure. Memorable characters. You know, a strange plot, like not like like strange plot in terms of, like, you don't know what you're going into about what some where the direction the story goes, which is fun. So the kid actors were memorable, and people wanted a sequel for years, but it never happened. It was a Richard Donner film. One of his low key classics here. I wouldn't say low key. It's very pop. This movie's still popular, even if it's just one movie. I don't think it even did amazing when it came out. It was just a video hit, over the years. Even I'm forgetting his name now. The actor who plays Short Round, he's in it, and he's been saying, "Oh, I want to do a sequel for years." But that's The Goonies. I'll say those movies look great on 4K, both Glass and Goonies. Up next is Glory. Now, if you do not know about this movie, it was directed by Edward Zwick, who did Blood Diamond and The Last Samurai, which Last Samurai, one of my favorite movies of all time. And Glory was one of his earlier films. This is about, it was, I think, during the Civil War, where you have this black regiment, and it also starts some, younger actor, notable actors not during the time, but before their careers really took off, such as Denzel Washington. Morgan Freeman was a bit established by then, but particularly Denzel Washington. I think this was he got a nomination for his role, which for earlier in his career is very good. And as for the movie itself, I think it is a pretty good movie. It sort of reminds me of Full Metal Jacket a bit, where it is mostly just the training. It's not really going to the war much. The war is more in the third act rather than throughout the movie. It's more about the training the the African Americans to get into the army, and the prejudice and everything about that. Matthew Broderick is also really good as the captain. Strange how in this cover they kind of made him look brown for some reason. Doesn't look like Matthew Broderick, but regardless, very good movie. I would recommend to check it out. Very very good and very powerful ending. Very good acting as well. Up next is Godzilla King of the Monsters. I don't have the first Godzilla. I'm not a fan of the 2014 film. Yes, it's well made, but the characters is not. Like, I don't care for what they did with Brian. Like the Bryan Cranston thing is so stupid. I just can't watch that movie anymore. Um, Now this, it's a mixed bag. Like the Godzilla stuff is great. It's well directed, but the characters are all over the place. The eco terrorism plot is so ridiculous. Charles Dance and the wife is a horrible character. And it's like you're supposed to like feel like her I don't know if you're supposed to like her. She's supposed to have redeemed himself, but it's like no. How can we redeem you for releasing Ghidorah to the world? Yeah, oh, you're such a good person. But regardless, and it's also long as well. But again, these movies tend to be on the longer side. And if you're a Godzilla fan, you just watch it for the Godzilla stuff. You don't really, you kind of just wipe away the human plot lines. But if you just but if you can't look past it, I get that this is one of the weaker Godzilla films. Thankfully, Godzilla vs Kong and Godzilla Minus One, which I have yet to see and yet, remedy that. Also, fantastic looking 4K. And next up, we got Godzilla vs Kong. The best one of these movies so far. Yes, still have the character issue, but I do think you have what's his name, Brian Tree Henry. That's my favorite character of that cast, and he is going to come back for the sequel, so that's good. There's more monster action, which is very good. The other one, there was about the same amount. The problem is that because it's a longer movie and it was more spread out. This has, I think, maybe a bit more monster action, but because the movie's like 2 hours, the flow is just way better. The whole Mecha Godzilla stuff is fantastic. This movie in general is like one of the best 4Ks you can ever get with the audio and the visuals. And Yeah, no, it's just a fun movie. Like, like again, some of the human stuff is dumb. And the Hollow Earth stuff, some people might not really like that idea of the franchise, but whatever. You're just in for the ride, which that's how I see these movies. So again, I would say if you like get 4Ks, that's a very high recommendation for me. Up next is Goodfellas. Now I did hear about this 4K being very like not good, but I mean whatever. Like I don't now. Granted, I don't really know too much about the technical stuff, but as a film by itself, it's fantastic. Like Goodfellas is masterpiece, the best Scorsese film. I don't think you can ever top it. And there's really not much to say. If you know Goodfellas, you know why this movie is great. I just love the movie because it's weird when the Blu-ray has more detail than the 4K. It's just a black circle, but yeah. Regardless, that's Goodfellas. All right, I'll just put it right here. Up next is The Greatest Showman. I keep in mind some of these movies I got for very cheap, like Goodfellas and and Greatest Showman. I wouldn't especially for movies I haven't really seen before. I get. Greatest Showman was the first time I watched when I got this on 4K, and I really liked it. I love Hugh Jackman. I love the songs. I went to Hugh Jackman's concert in Toronto a few years ago, which I will probably upload to the channel in the new year when I have not much content to put up. And yes, it had gotten criticism over like the inaccuracies in real life and everything. But I mean, whatever. Yes, it is a bit of a fantasy, a romanticization of P.T. Burnham. But I think that's sort of the point. It is just more of this larger than life portrayal of these events. And regardless, it's just like it's just well directed. The actors are doing the best that they can. I wouldn't say like every actor is great, but the songs, yeah, no. There's a reason why this movie did really well when it came out. Just gonna take a little sip of water. Mm-hmm. All right, next up, controversial one, The Green Book. Got this one cheap. I heard about all of the issues when it won the Oscar at the time. So when I watched it, I was curious because I thought it was fantastic. In fact, aside from one scene in the movie where what's his name, Tony, throws out the glasses from the plumbers in the beginning of the movie, which is very inconsistent to the rest of the movie. I would actually say this is a 10 out of 10, at least in my opinion. I know a lot of people did not like this movie winning because, oh, if a movie with this type of themes and messages was going to win, why would it be this one instead of Black Klansman? This is, white savior, this is racist, this is that. And I'm like, I think this movie wasn't for one. I don't think this movie was meant to be this Oscar-winning movie. I think they were just trying to make this charming movie. Now, there are some things you can criticize, particularly with the with Don Cherry's story, because some people are like, why didn't they make a story about Don Cherry instead of Tony? And that's mainly because Tony's family were producing and offering their story more than Don Shirley's family, which the filmmaker said they didn't even know that he had still living family that could have contributed and would have helped if they had known earlier. And even then, this is just a charming movie. Like it's just a fun road trip movie about these two guys bonding and understanding their sides of their everyday life. And should it have won Best Picture? Maybe not. But I mean, it's not like it was this is a terrible movie. It shouldn't have even got to the Oscars type of level. And I think a lot of film like and that's the thing, because I love film, but I also don't like people who put film so high up their totem pole that they just look down on a lot of movies because of it. So it's like, Green Book is actually the worst movie I've ever seen. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, really, are you really that upset just because a very decent movie didn't won compared to a movie that you personally liked? That's really ridiculous. Like, come on. Like, yeah, Black Klansman I think would have should have won, but it was a bit too harsh of a movie for the critics at the Oscars, and I understand why this won. And even then, even just because it won doesn't mean it's a bad movie. So yeah, I don't want to get too much into Green Book anymore because I don't want to just constantly rant about it. But I love the movie. I think it's funny. I think it's it deserved its recognition and success. Up next is The Green Mile. If you know this movie, you know why it's just fantastic. Very powerful, very hard hitting. The acting is just top notch. The ending is just so depressing, and it's just I think this is one. I think this and Shawshank Redemption are like the back-to-back powerhouse of Stephen King writing, which is funny because we all think about Stephen King as just the horror guy, but it's also like he does the prison drama so effectively, and it's kind of like surprising, but it also helps you got fantastic directors and actors, composers, just to make a beautiful movie. So yeah, not much to say about Green Mile because I think a lot of people know about this movie, and it's a beautiful one. Next up is one that kind of slowly got popular over the years, particularly in the pandemic time, and that is Hacksaw Ridge. When this came out, I mean, a lot of people watched it, like because it made good money and it had some Oscar buzz, and it got some nominations and stuff. But it wasn't like everyone has watched it. Over time, I think when people are getting locked down and people are just kind of bored and start to watch these older movies, people discovered this movie much more often, and they really went back. And now when you have reaction channels on YouTube, a lot of people watch Hacksaw Ridge, and that's mainly because like it is a very good movie. Like I don't go into it too much. It's based on a true story about this combat medic who saved a bunch of people during the Battle of Okinawa, and it's directed by Mel Gibson, stars Andrew Garfield. It's very gory, and it's intense, like a war movie. But it also has a very good first half about the the struggles the lead is going through. And it is a bit of a faith-based movie, but it's also not just about it. And because it's based on a real guy, it's like you're shocked by how he did everything here in the movie. And apparently they had to downplay it in real life because he did a lot of crazy stuff in real life. That Mel Gibson said, if we try to put it in the movie, people said we were lying. And yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I wouldn't say is it the best war movie all time? It's up there. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it is a very good movie. And there's a reason why it's been getting this, revival ever since. Now, the thing is, though, the 4K is you can get this movie cheap on 4K, which is actually pretty good because it's a great movie and it looks great on 4K. So, yeah, try to get it. Let's get some water. All right. Next up, Hancock. This is one of the earlier 4K releases, I believe. And I had to get on Amazon and stuff. If you know Hancock, I think it's a decent movie. The Will Smith being the superhero that destroys property, has to learn to better himself. And then the poster here, of course, just spoils the fact that Charlize Theron is like sort of I wouldn't say the villain, but another superpower person. It's also was strangely co-written by Vince Gilligan, who did Breaking Bad. It is so strange because this is right before he did Breaking Bad, so it's like I'm curious to see if he will ever do movies that are not tied to that universe, but we'll never know. In general, I think this movie is pretty solid. It has been infamous for being like, each act of the movie is a very different like movie. Like the first half, a lot of people would prefer like if the movie stayed its course, but then when Charlize Theron exposes herself, it kind of goes into a different movie. And it's a movie that tries to do a lot, and I think for the most part it works. Could have been a longer movie, and that's another thing. This movie's only had an hour and a half, and I think that's why people were like, this could have been either longer or needed more movies like in its in a franchise, because it tried to do a lot, and I wouldn't say it worked 100%, but I would say it's 70% of the time it works, and I really like this one. It's still fun. It's, still like, has some decent action and effects, and Will Smith is fun, and the whole premise is very interesting. Up next is Happy Death Day. Big hit when it came out. Groundhog Day, but as a horror film, which if I talked about Freaky in the last video, which was Freaky Friday, but as a horror film, which I said I prefer Freaky more than I would say Freaky is a bit better than Happy Death Day in my opinion, but also that's because Freaky had better kills, because this is a PG-13 film, so there's not a lot of blood and violence. But I do say that Tree is the best like horror protagonist I've seen in a while, aside from like Ash Williams, because she really starts off as a horrible person, but throughout the movie actually gets better, and it's well deserved of her ending. Which apparently, it's the funny thing is that in the I believe in this DVD, the special features for the Blu-ray, you do have the alternate ending where she gets a horrible ending, and there's a reason why they changed it. It was a complete mood killer, but in general, I would say decent 4K, very very decent movie. I would say if you like horror comedies, you either have seen it or you should check it out. But I will also say that Jessica Rothe really needs to get more movies because she's pretty good. I don't know why she's not in more mainstream stuff. Up next is Happy Death Day to You. This one was polarizing when it came out. It still did well, but because it lost more money than the first one, Blumhouse has not really taken action to do a third movie. And considering the fact of how the plot of this movie is, I can also see how it's hard to do a third movie to begin with. Spoilers, but the whole point of this movie is that it goes into a sci-fi direction where the reason why there's a loop during the first movie was because of the science experiment. So they go into another loop, and it was more comedy than horror. Just like, ooh. Yeah, just trying to recover from being sick. Um, and that's the thing. This movie isn't really more of a horror movie. It's more comedy now, comedy sci-fi with a few kills here and there. And that was a very big deviation from the first film, and that's why people were like, I'm not a big fan of it. However, I do say this still has, some decent ideas and some good, emotional scenes. Um, and yeah, I would say like some of the humor isn't as strong as the first, but also it also works as a good pair with the first one. Overall, if you like the Christopher Landon films, you like this. It is, yeah, weaker than the first film for sure, but I also think it has, its good moments, which is why I have it on 4K. Up, up next is Heat. Um, I've watched this for the first time very recently when I got this on 4K, which was a very cheap 4K, by the way. Heat is one of those movies where, like Hacksaw Ridge, where he put it on 4K for sale all the time. As for what I think about the movie, it's okay. It is an influential movie for the crime genre in terms of it's the movie that kind of inspired like GTA and like all these GTA and all these crime basically crime media as a whole. It's in terms of you have heists, you have these detectives trying to find these criminals, criminals with their own lives and everything like that. Like it's a very complex movie at the time and very interesting with the dynamics. And that's why it was such a big deal when it came out. When you watch it now, I wouldn't say it's a huge like oh my god what a this is a fantastic movie. It's just it was a very unique film from when it came out. And I still think there's some good stuff like Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. They're still good in the movie. I heard also they're trying to do a sequel. I don't know how they're going to do that, but who knows. But in general, I think it's an okay movie. I wouldn't say like it's my like one of the best of the genre, but it is very influential of the genre. It's just so many movies that kept coming by that made it sort of not stand out as much anymore. Up next is Hellboy, the first one. Um, Honestly, not the best superhero movie I've seen. It's not terrible. It's just a very weirdly disjointed one. There's not a lot of action. It's there's some action, but the story itself is very meandering because it's trying to do so much to try to introduce the whole organization and the characters. And you have an original character that is not from the comics made up for the movie to establish this. So the main character isn't even Hellboy. It's some random dude. And it doesn't make sense. And I also think the villains are really cool. They're interesting, but they're barely in the movie. And the third act is, definitely the best part of the movie. But even then, it's I also feel like they should have not have done the whole Hellboy's gonna become apocalyptic immediately because then where are you gonna go from there? So it's a weird movie. And people say this is a classic just because they love Guillermo del Toro. And yeah, Guillermo del Toro, great director, and for this movie he does a good job. But when it came to the story and how to adapt Hellboy, not the best way to adapt it. Even 2019, it's a worse movie, but it was more Hellboy than this movie. But moving on, we got Hellboy 2. Way better movie. Really good. This is where I was like, yeah, Guillermo del Toro know what he was doing this time. It is going for a more original, villains and everything like that. But that's where Guillermo del Toro works. When he was trying to adapt the comic, but also trying to introduce the comic for people who have no idea what the whole deal with Hellboy is, it didn't work. But because all the heavy work has been finished from the first film, even the character that was in the first film that was the protagonist, he is not in this movie because he has no need to be involved. So now it's just with Hellboy. You got a few new characters involved. You have the Golden Army, as the title alludes to. It's definitely like if Hellboy just ran into Pan's Labyrinth, and that's why it just works. It's just fun, got some great action, got some great direction. It is Guillermo del Toro, off the top from Pan's Labyrinth, which was very like, he knew what he was trying to do. And that's why it was a shame that they never did a third Hellboy after this. Yeah, the first one wasn't that good, but the second really showed the potential of that series. Up next, this is one of the first 4Ks, by the way, that came out during like 2017, like launch titles, by the way. Hitman, Agent 47. I will defend this movie. I found this one. I was very lucky to find this movie, by the way, because it's not easy to find. Because, like I said, this was a launch title for the 4K medium, and considering the fact that it's not even like a popular title, like I mean, if you know the Hitman, like I love the Hitman games, but if you know the internet, Hitman Agent 47, this movie has horrible reviews. No one likes this movie. In fact, I seem to be the only person to like this movie. Which I think it's okay, because I love the games and I understood why this movie was like it, which was basically it was trying to be Absolution, and yeah, trying to that's the thing. Like if you played Absolution, you understood why the movie was acting the way it was, with the portrayal of the characters and everything and the action. And yeah, the story is definitely not that good with the Terminator type of story happening. But it's still a fun movie. I would say it's still entertaining in my opinion. I do think there's some hypocriticism when it came to the original movie from 2007 is better than this one because of like this and that, even though the 2007 movie, in my opinion, is way worse. But very good 4K. First, it's not easy to find though, so my recommendation doesn't really matter. And since I just love those games, I like this movie's just good. Also, Rupert Friend, he's a good hitman. I know the whole he didn't shave his head, whatever. Like I don't care. I watched it in theaters when it came out. I think the issue though is that Hitman shouldn't be a movie. It should be a TV series, which I don't know why they haven't really got into it, but who knows? Maybe one day. But yeah, Hitman on 4K. Who would have thought? Up next is Hobbs and Shaw. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw. This and Fast 8 are just sort of my favorite of the Fast and Furious. That's why they're on 4K. The other films, I just don't have. I don't care to collect them. With the case of these, though, because they're so off the wall, just over the top, goofy as hell, I had to get them. So I would say Fast 8 is my favorite, with this just trailing behind, because at least because of this one, it's like there's barely any like drama or anything. It's just balls to the walls action and like comedy, and it does its job really well. Jason Statham, The Rock, great chemistry. Idris Elba's the villain is fun. The whole superhuman type of ability, that's ridiculous, but that's kind of the Fast Furious franchise was over the top to begin with, which that's also why I kind of did not like the newer films. And I know it's like, but this one was over the top. But it's like, I mean, if the characters though, it makes sense, and also like treating it as its own standalone thing, and it works. When it's like in the main series though, it's just ridiculous. But even that still, very very fun movie. And I would say probably one of the highlights of that franchise. Next up is Home Alone 1. I wish that 2 and 3 just got on 4K, but I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. This is a classic. There's really not much to explain here. I would say the 4K is the best. Like, Disney is always inconsistent with 4Ks. But in general, like, if you haven't got Home Alone on physical media, this is the best way to get it. It is just, a shame that we never will get most likely the second movie or the third movie on 4K. And yes, I will defend the third movie. But yeah, I'm not going to waste time talking about Home Alone. Who has not seen Home Alone? And the final movie for today, and this will be a bit weird because of how I positioned it as, H instead of G, and that is Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I know it says Grinch in the middle, and that makes it emphasis it's a G title, but I follow the H, How the Grinch, because the Illumination film is called The Grinch, So I just put how. I know it's cheating. I don't care. That's how I put it. I know it would stick out to some people that, yeah. Anyway, I like this movie. I know some people, will say this movie does not work because it, tries adult humor. It's, the makeup's creepy and it tried to expand too much on a simple children's book. Much like how Cat in the Hat is a terrible movie. However, while my reasoning for Cat in the Hat is that if you just remove the idea that's an adaptation, the movie actually works kind of good and entertaining on its own right. This is the opposite. A lot of people do tend to actually defend this movie because, for one, Jim Carrey and the Oscar-winning makeup, fantastic combo. Um, Also, the fact that it's very nostalgic, and for a Grinch adaptation, aside from the classic cartoon, it's probably the best way they could have done it. The Illumination film is just too generic and safe. This is like, yeah, you got adult humor, but honestly, whatever. It's just like, sometimes the adults have to have, a bit of fun in there, when they watch the movie. And like it was, honestly, well directed. It has a weird way of how it's gritty but also colorful at the same time. Um, and the makeup looks great. You can't tell that's no one. You can tell that's Jim Carrey underneath all that stuff. And like, yeah, like I don't know. It's just a very well. It's just a classic. Like I don't know what to tell. Yeah, not everyone's gonna like it. Some people just prefer the Illuminate. I don't know. If you prefer the Illumination film, you either are just a parent who doesn't like the adult jokes, or you just don't like good movies. Nah, no, no. I'm joking. I'm joking. But other than that, that's the video for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week. And hope you guys keep staying tuned and just subscribing and liking the videos. Thanks for watching, and till then, have a nice day.